Same note as before. The Amazon Bahrain strike claim from Iran's IRGC is real, July 21st, 2026. There is no confirmed specific U.S. response to that exact incident as of this writing, so that part stays framed as open analysis, not invented fact. Everything else is expanded from verified reporting, timeline, casualty figures, market reactions, and the broader war context. Cold open. July 21st, 2026. Somewhere over the Persian Gulf, a data center that used to stream your Prime Video is now, allegedly, a smoking hole in the ground. No confirmation from Amazon, no confirmation from Bahrain, no confirmation from the Pentagon. Just a press release out of Tehran claiming their Revolutionary Guard just turned a cloud computing facility into a crater. Welcome to the video, everybody. Intro, teaser. Today we're breaking down Iran's claim that it just hit one of Amazon's data hubs in Bahrain with cruise missiles, why that's a genuinely strange escalation even by the standards of a war that's already 10 nights deep into nightly strikes, and what it might mean for how this whole thing plays out from here. We're going to walk through the timeline of the last 2 weeks, get into the actual military logic, or lack of it, behind hitting commercial cloud infrastructure, talk about what this does to oil markets and shipping, and then get into some real strategic analysis near the end. And like always, about 3/4 of the way through, we've got the global roundup, some other stuff happening around the world that's easy to miss with all the Gulf headlines eating the news cycle. So settle in, this one's a longer breakdown. Let's get into it. The rewinder timeline. Okay, let's rewind, because the pace of this thing has genuinely gotten hard to keep up with even for people who do this for a living. A few months back, there was a memorandum of understanding, basically a soft ceasefire, that everybody hoped would hold. It held for a while, long enough that people started writing de-escalation articles. Then, starting around early July, Iran began going after shipping in the Strait of Hormuz again, targeting commercial vessels, trying to enforce its own rules of passage on a waterway that carries a huge chunk of the world's oil. A handful of ships got hit in the first week of July. The U.S. responded by ramping up strikes on Iranian assets tied to that activity. Then came the part that really lit the fuse. American service members killed in Jordan and Iraq. The president came out and said Iran would pay for that many times over, and pretty much immediately after, the ceasefire was declared dead, officially over, not just quietly ignored. Since then, U.S. Central Command has been running strikes on Iranian targets for 10 straight nights. We're talking military command centers, missile and drone launch sites, maritime capability, air defense, and radar installations. Explosions have been reported around Shiraz and on the southern coast near Konarak and Chabahar. This isn't a one-off strike package. This is a sustained campaign. Iran's response to that sustained campaign has been to widen the map rather than just absorb it. Instead of only hitting military targets back, they've gone regional and infrastructural. Desalination plants in Kuwait got hit, which immediately raises water security concerns for a country that depends heavily on desalinated water. Radar sites, early warning systems, a Patriot air defense system, satellite communication infrastructure, all reportedly targeted across multiple Gulf states. Accommodation buildings used by U.S. personnel at Bahrain's Sheikh Issa Air Base were reportedly hit too. And then, on top of all of that, you get this Amazon claim that IRGC cruise missiles destroyed the central data infrastructure of Amazon's operation in Bahrain. And this isn't even the first time Amazon's regional infrastructure has been targeted in this war. Back in the spring, Iran officially named 18 U.S. tech companies as legitimate military targets. Amazon, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Google, Apple, Meta, Boeing, Oracle, Cisco, IBM, the list goes on. And in April, there was already a reported drone strike on an AWS facility in Bahrain that caused a temporary service disruption, following earlier strikes on 2 AWS data centers in the UAE. So in a weird way, today's claim isn't a new chapter. It's basically volume 3 of an ongoing subplot in this war that most people haven't been paying attention to because it doesn't look like a traditional military target. Casual, sarcastic beat. And can we talk for a second about how these IRGC statements are always written like a Call of Duty loading screen? Aerospace warriors, the Black Knight of the American enemy's radar. My guy, you launched some missiles at a server room that hosts somebody's grocery delivery app. You don't need alliteration and a movie trailer voice to sell that. Somewhere in Tehran, there's a guy who really wanted to work in marketing before he got assigned to write IRGC press releases, and honestly respect the hustle. Wrong industry, though. And look, it's not just the Iranian side doing the dramatic framing. Every outlet covering this is doing the same claims, alleges, reportedly dance, because literally nobody outside Iran has verified a single piece of this. Not Bahrain's government, not the US military, not Amazon. As of right now, this is a one-source story, and the source is the party that benefits from looking like it's winning. That doesn't mean it's false, Iran has hit real Amazon infrastructure before, so it's not implausible. It just means we should hold it a little loosely until somebody who isn't Tehran confirms it. Technical detail. Now here's the part you acronym addicts actually came for. Let's talk about why hitting a hyperscale data center with cruise missiles is such a strange military choice. These facilities are not hardened military targets. They're not built like an airbase with reinforced hangars and blast walls. They're built for uptime and redundancy, not for surviving a warhead. And that redundancy is actually the whole point. Hyperscalers like Amazon design their infrastructure assuming individual facilities will fail. Power outages, fires, hardware failures, even natural disasters. The entire architecture is built around multiple availability zones, so that if one site goes down, traffic reroutes automatically and customers barely notice. So from a pure, how much operational damage did you actually do standpoint, taking out one node in a global cloud network is not the same as taking out, say, an integrated air defense system or a runway. It's closer to a symbolic strike, something you do because it's easy to hit, gets you a headline, and lets you claim you're escalating against the enemy's economy without actually requiring you to punch through real air defenses to hit something that shoots back. Compare that to what the US has reportedly been targeting in Iran this whole campaign. Command and control nodes, missile and drone launch infrastructure, radar and air defense systems. That's a completely different category of target. Those are things that, if destroyed, directly degrade the other side's ability to fight. A data center hosting commercial cloud workloads doesn't do that. It's a message, not a mission kill. And back when I was in the cockpit, targets like that basically never made the priority list unless there was a very specific, very justified intelligence or communications angle to it. You don't burn a strike package on symbolism when the enemy still has real capability standing. That said, and I'll flag this because it's genuinely worth mentioning, Iran's official justification is that these facilities support the enemy's military and intelligence operations, meaning they're arguing this isn't really commercial infrastructure at all, it's dual use. That's a pretty common framing in modern warfare, arguing that because a company processes some government or defense-adjacent workloads, its entire footprint becomes fair game. Whether that argument would hold up under any actual international law scrutiny is a separate conversation, but it's clearly the legal-ish cover Tehran is using to justify going after Silicon Valley's regional real estate, instead of just military bases. 80 break 1. Speaking of staying sharp when the news cycle is genuinely this chaotic. You know what's not chaotic? My mornings, since I started drinking energy drink sponsor. No jitters, no 2 p.m. crash, just enough of a kick to get through a day where I'm reading IRGC press releases for a living. Use code AFTERBURNER for 20% off your first order. Links in the description below. All right, back to it. Strategic context, markets and shipping. Let's talk about what this is doing to markets, because that's honestly one of the more concrete, verifiable threads in this whole story. Brent crude has pushed above $90 a barrel as traders price, and more disruption in the Gulf. That's not a small move. And there's a reason oil traders care about a data center getting allegedly hit way more than you'd think. It's not about the data center itself, it's about what it signals. Every time Iran demonstrates it's willing and able to hit infrastructure outside the purely military lane, it tells the market that the war's blast radius is expanding, and that raises the risk premium on everything that moves through or near the Gulf. Prediction markets have apparently already priced in a majority chance of further Iranian action against Gulf states in the next day or two, which tells you traders aren't treating this as a one-off. And it's not just oil. You've got a tanker reportedly hit in the Strait of Hormuz around the same time as all this. You've got Yemen's Houthis, who are aligned with Iran, separately threatening a naval blockade of Saudi Arabia, which would open up basically a whole second front in a completely different part of the map. When you stack all of that together, Gulf infrastructure strikes, tanker incidents, blockade threats, you start to see why the response to, did they really hit an Amazon data center matters way beyond, is my cloud gaming session going to lag? It's one more data point feeding into a market that's already nervous about global energy supply and trade routes. Host aside, fighter pilot perspective. I'll be honest, from a background flying fighters, the thing that strikes me most about this war isn't the individual strikes, it's the pacing. 10 consecutive nights of US strikes is a real operational tempo. That's not a one-and-done retaliation package. That's a sustained campaign that requires real logistics, real intelligence updates, real target refresh cycles. You don't run that kind of tempo unless leadership has decided this is going to run for a while. And on the other side, Iran clearly can't match that tempo symmetrically, so they're doing the thing weaker actors in asymmetric conflicts almost always do. They widen the target set to things they can actually reach and actually damage, even if those targets don't move the military needle. Desalination plants, radar sites, a data center. It's not about parity of firepower. It's about maintaining the appearance of parity in the news cycle. AD break 2. If watching a war escalate into strikes on commercial cloud infrastructure over what's essentially a manufactured casus belli makes you want to get some of your savings out of a system that depends this much on stability, that's exactly the conversation I've been having with the folks at Gold IRA Sponsor. Physical gold in your own name, doesn't care what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, doesn't care what Amazon's uptime looks like this week. There's a free info kit linked below if you want to see how it works, no obligation. Speculative section, clearly flagged. Now, what does the US actually do in direct response to this specific Amazon claim? I want to be really upfront here. As of when I'm recording this, there's no confirmed specific American response to this exact incident. I'm not going to sit here and invent a dramatic Pentagon press conference that hasn't happened, because that's how misinformation happens in a war that already has enough of it floating around. What I can tell you is the pattern we've seen over the last 10 nights, and my best read based on that pattern. The US hasn't been responding to individual Iranian claims one for one with a matching individual retaliation. Instead, the nightly strike campaign has been framed as ongoing payback for the deaths of American service members, meaning new Iranian provocations, including this one, if it's confirmed, most likely just get folded into justifying strikes that were already happening, rather than triggering some entirely separate standalone military reaction aimed specifically at whoever hit that data center. If actual reporting comes out that contradicts that read, I'll do a follow-up video and correct the record. And that's the deal I try to keep with you all on this channel. Speculate clearly, label it as speculation, and come back and fix it when the facts land differently. Global roundup. All right, let's do the roundup. A few things happening elsewhere in the world that are easy to lose track of with the Gulf eating every headline right now. First, that Houthi blockade threat I mentioned. Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthi movement has said it intends to impose a naval blockade on Saudi Arabia. If that actually materializes in any real way, it opens a genuinely separate front that could hit shipping and energy prices even harder than the current Gulf strikes are doing on their own, because it's a different choke point with different players involved. Second, there's actually a real diplomatic thread running in parallel to all this destruction, which is easy to forget. Lebanon's president is reportedly headed to the White House this week to present a plan aimed at disarming Hezbollah and securing an Israeli withdrawal from parts of Lebanese territory. That's a completely separate track from the Iran war itself, but it's a reminder that not every relationship in the region is moving toward more escalation. Some of them are still actively trying to de-escalate, even while the main event is getting louder. And third, worth flagging just for the domestic angle, there's real political pressure building around rising gasoline prices at home as this war drags on, which is part of why you're seeing so much emphasis in official statements on framing these strikes as justified retaliation rather than open-ended war. Leadership knows the public tolerance for a long, expensive conflict is not infinite, especially once it starts showing up at the pump. 4D chess strategic analysis. So let's tie all of this together, because I think there's a coherent strategic picture underneath what looks like just a chaotic pile of headlines. Both sides in this war, on paper, would probably prefer to wind it down. There are reportedly still back-channel messages moving between Washington and Tehran even now, which tells you diplomacy hasn't fully collapsed. It's just being run on a parallel track to the missiles. But neither side can afford to be the one that visibly blinks first. Because in a conflict like this, looking like you backed down is its own kind of strategic loss, independent of what's actually happening on the battlefield. Iran physically cannot match US military capability in a straight-up fight, and everybody involved knows that, including Iran. So instead of trying to trade blow for blow on purely military targets, they're spreading the conflict sideways. Into commercial infrastructure, into shipping lanes, into civilian adjacent systems like desalination and cloud computing, because those are places where they can still land visible, headline-generating hits without needing to punch through serious air defenses first. It's a way of claiming you're still winning the news cycle even if you're clearly losing the military exchange. The US, meanwhile, keeps grinding on the target set. It's actually built to dominate. Command nodes, launch sites, radar, air defense. Because that's the kind of fight where sustained tempo actually produces real degradation of Iranian capability over time. 10 nights of strikes isn't just theater, it's attrition. And in the middle of all that, you've got everybody else in the region, Bahrain, Kuwait, global shipping, and Amazon's regional customers, just absorbing the collateral damage of two countries that are negotiating through explosions instead of through a table, even while some of the actual negotiating is apparently still happening quietly in the background. That's the uncomfortable truth about wars like this. The loudest, most headline-grabbing strikes aren't always the ones that matter most strategically, and the quiet diplomatic meetings nobody's covering might end up mattering more than any single data center. Otro. So here's my actual question for you. Do you think a strike on commercial infrastructure like an Amazon data center changes anything strategically in a war like this? Or is it just noise layered on top of a conflict that's already running on its own momentum at this point? Drop your take in the comments below. I genuinely read all of them, and if there's a piece of this you want me to dig into deeper in a follow-up, tell me and I'll try to cover it next. If you want the longer form breakdowns, the podcast and the book are both linked down below, and if you want these updates the second something actually moves, get on the email list. Links there too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.